Good afternoon. Welcome to the City Port Joint Committee meeting. I'm calling this meeting to order. The time is now 3:30 p.m. Madam Clerk, will you please take roll call?
Okay, CEO and Port Director Kristen Dekas. City Manager James Vega.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem McQueen LaShawn.
Here.
President Zacharias.
Here.
Mayor Perez.
Here.
And let the record reflect that Vice President Ramirez is absent.
Thank you. We'll now move on to public comments. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes. Madam Clerk, do we have any public comments for tonight?
No public comments.
Thank you. We now move on to discussion. Minutes for approval. May I have a motion and a second to approve the July 24th, 2024 minutes?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Thank you. Madam Clerk?
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes with President Ramirez absent.
Perfect. Thank you. The item on the agenda tonight is the Community Benefit Fund projects. The recommendation is to discuss and provide recommendations if desired. I will start with Mr. City Manager.
Yeah, and I'm only going to pull up the slide that shows the projects that we had previously discussed. And since this meeting's going very quickly, I'll just...
We'll be done in 5
yeah,
minutes.
it took me a minute. But you may recall that we met at our last meeting. We kind of finalized this list, which totals $113,000. We estimated that we have $143,000 in this year's fund. And so we each went back to our respective boards to get feedback on what the remaining $30,000 could be used for. I know the city went back to the city council and focused on the mental health and public safety categories. And then my understanding, and I'll turn it over to Kristen, is the port also went back and they focused on some categories. So maybe we start there and go from there.
Sure, I'll kick it off and then I'll kick it over to the president of our board. But we had a discussion of using the funds to, one, and I think it came up in this body, to look at how we could support the economic development plan the city rolled out. As partners in economic development, that might be a nice way to put some seed money towards getting your economic development strategy off the ground. And then the other that came back through our 5 members was looking at maybe either that or augmenting the grant writing. So those were the 2 that came back. I don't know if you want to elaborate, Commissioner?
Yes, those were the 2 that came back, was the Economic Development Plan, and I know I did attend, I believe it was your city council meeting where you talked about that, and I realized that it's only $36,000 or $33,000, but maybe chipping away at a certain part of the Economic Development Plan, and the other one was the Economic Development Plan and
The grant writing.
And the grant, or taking that additional money, the $33,000, and adding it to the grant writing.
Okay. So as you know, we had a brief discussion about it. We didn't know about the other options, so the only thing we really touched on was the economic development part of that. I think we would obviously have to take the grant writing back to our board for approval on that, since they didn't hear that portion of it.
Yeah, and I think I would suggest at this point, I think if the 2 boards kind of vet one of those ideas and then we can take that each back to our full boards for consideration again. But I think we've had a few categories talked about, so I think we can use this meeting to maybe narrow in on what category we're looking at.
Mayor Pro Tem, do you have any comments on it?
Yeah, just quickly. So I know you mentioned public safety, city manager. Specifically, we were talking about a K-9. And so that had come up before in this forum. So I guess my question now is, it seemed like, I guess maybe 2 or 3 meetings ago that we talked about that as a group. Are we not there anymore with the port?
I know
The port not there?
we did discuss it, and we went back to the port, and the port, the commissioners, our last board meeting we had was, okay, if we don't do the economic development plan portion of it, then why don't we roll the $33,000 into next year, and then perhaps if the $33,000 you didn't feel was enough to make an impact on the economic development plan, is use the full $133,000 towards the economic development plan. What we want to see is a bigger impact on helping the city move forward on what you all looked at on your economic development plan. So that's where we came back at our last board meeting.
So your board's proposal is to put the full of next year's into helping our economic development plan is what you would like to see out of that. That's
To reiterate what the commissioner is saying, we could either seed it this year with the 33 and get things going, or maybe we look at getting some proposals from some consultant that could look at how we're rolling out our strategic plan as well, and so how we work together on economic development and bring some leadership in to help guide us through that process in support of your economic development strategy and our strategic plan.
I do have a follow-up
Yeah,
question for
sure.
our city manager. So we've received the information on the economic development plan, but there has been no conversation. I don't remember there being any
Sorry, Mayor Pro
conversation.
Tem,
I'm
closer to
sorry.
you.
I can't remember there being any conversation with the council as to whether we're ready to pull the trigger on the economic development plan. And so for me, it seems a little premature because we haven't even had a discussion yet about it to try to move to that.
So I think the current status of the economic development plan was we brought it to council and the council adopted the plan. But the next step was going to be bringing back an implementation plan and I only say or because our budget is very tight this year. And so it might be sort of in phases. So, or, you know, a plan of what are the first things we can implement with available funding. And so that's sort of where we're at now. I think, and I talked to Kristen a little bit about this recently, and I think that the idea of some seed funding to implement the economic development plan could be beneficial because that's really the first big obstacle we're going to have is figuring out how to fund some of the things we want to do. I think for me, my biggest recommendation now would be if we're going to do that, keep it pretty general. Funding for the economic development plan, which we can then, come back and have a plan for. I wouldn't put it towards a specific project because we don't know what project is priority one yet. So it's something potentially useful in that we need to start implementing that plan. I think I've been pretty vocal about I see concerns with our cannabis market, and I think we're going to see those start picking up in the next few months. And so we're really trying to get in front of that, although we're already working from behind to try to get some economic development to start, be ready when that starts kind of falling off. So there's several projects in that plan that we could look at and come back and recommend implementing with $30,000 potentially paying for some of the things like appraisals of properties and things like that.
Yeah, I think one of the things James and I talked about is getting some consensus here today around using the funding for the economic development plan, and then James and I could do a deeper dive and look at some of those seed projects and then bring them back to this body and make sure you're comfortable with that. We're meeting once a month, and then we could go back to our mutual boards and get full consensus. So that would be our recommendation, but of course it's the will of the board here.
So that I'm clear, just so I'm clear, we're only talking about the balance of the 30,000 for now, and we're looking at, on our side, the council side, what we've approved. We're waiting to see what you all plan to do with this list, because this is the same list I think we've talked about several times.
So our board has approved this list. So we have full consensus, I think, on both of our boards for the 113. So it's this 33 today where we went back to our board, thought economic development, heard it from James in this forum. So maybe that's a good next step. We'll define it better for you at a future meeting, but perhaps for the vote, the official vote, we could get consensus around using it for economic development.
And what that could look like is essentially having the council, since the port's already approved this list, we can have the council approve this list formally and then identify using the remaining 30,000 for economic development or whatever category the board and the council agree to.
So I like the idea of that because I know, like Mayor Pro Tem said, we haven't even had a chance to look at what that means yet, but I knew there was going to be some issues of actually implementing some of those things. So I think that's a good idea, actually. I think that's a smart way of using this.
It's collaborative.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Great. So do we need a motion?
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
gonna say, let's
Okay.
keep the quick meeting going.
Can I have a motion to approve the use of the 33,000? Is that the amount?
Yes.
I
33,000?
think it's 30, 'cause
30?
it's 143 total.
Okay, so the.
Well, actually,
The
there may be
balance.
one,
So I'll say the
but,
balance.
but there may be one thing we need to clarify. I think that recreation program scholarship, I think we had talked about that at one point, but I'm not sure that that was on the port's final list, that $3,000. Because if that's not on the list, then it would be
I think we
33,000.
were okay with that.
I believe it was the port, that was
Yeah.
their recommendation.
Yeah, I
Okay.
think it
Their
was the
idea.
3,000, and then there, so it's 30, I want to
I think
say,
it's
is the
30.
balance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay,
30,000.
then can I have a motion to approve the remainder of the
Yeah.
community fund to go towards,
Mutually agreed upon
Economic
economic
development.
development projects.
yes.
There we go.
Motion to approve.
Do I have a second?
We'll let you guys
There's
make
only
those
one more.
choices.
I don't know that I can. I can't do a motion.
Yeah,
Can
you
I?
can.
Oh,
It's
okay.
just good form to let others.
To let
Because,
people know.
well, I'm
Yeah.
so used to not doing it at council meetings, I can't do a motion, so it's like, okay.
Okay, all
Madam
in
Clerk?
favor?
Yes,
Aye.
aye,
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes with Vice President Ramirez absent.
perfect, thank you. Okay, so if we have nothing further from this board,
No?
nothing further? Okay, then I'm going to adjourn this meeting, the time being 3:41.
All right.
How
Good
Jesse
job.
would get that fast without.
I think that's a good idea.
Women,
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
women,
I
that's what
know.
it is.